To Miss Rachel Blaney for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you so much, Chair. And as always, everything goes through the Chair. My first question is for Ms. Usherwood. It's very good to see you, my friend. I want to come back to a bit of your testimony. You talked about part of the reason you came out was because you felt a lot of trust for your leadership and that it was safe and that particular person gave you a sense of comfort in taking the next step. And so I know that that's not, and you said that as well in your testimony, is not often the reality for so many other people who serve. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what is needed within the military at that level to sort of create systems that will provide more inclusive practices for leadership so that we can see that safe environment increase.
Well, the military actually is trying to change its culture as identified by Madame Deschamps in her report and subsequent reports. It's trying to change it. But like anything in the government, there's a shortage of resources and there's a shortage of time and money. And that's part of the problem is like, there's just so many things in the military that you're supposed to be getting training on that actually we're not getting training. Ethical behavior, for example, is supposed to be, you're supposed to receive training in it every single year. And even though I was a trainer, I did not necessarily receive it every year. This is a common thing in the military that not enough people, not enough time, not enough money, not enough resources, too many missions. One of the things that I really think the military could do is get rid of some of the systemic discrimination that's in it. And for example, in the Queen's Regulations and Orders, which are the regulations for the Canadian Armed Forces, in Volume 1, it says he 167 times. She is not in the volume in any way. There is a single sentence where it talks about wherever it says it's a masculine gender is also included a female gender. But if I open the book and I read about command, and this is the book that tells the responsibilities of commanders from the vice chief of defense staff all the way down to the lowest officer, it talks about commander. It always says he. His responsibility. He will do this. He will do that. I know it's a PDF. I could change that and remove the gender nature of the book. I could probably do that myself in a couple hours. If I just replaced it with he, she, it would be even quicker. I could do that in minutes. I don't see why. Here we are, 7 years since the forces agreed to use gender-based analysis plus, why they haven't changed those. It's in my last year, I managed to change it that when the base commander is leaving on my base, they no longer gave flowers to the wife, because that's what it said in the process and how that was working.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Sorry.
That was very helpful, and I really appreciate the flower example. I think that really clears up some of those myths that should be over by now. But I'm just wondering, because this is a study about what happens when people leave their service and go into the VAC, into the VAC system. So I'm just wondering if you could describe the discrimination and how it's translated into leaving the service and moving into VAC and where the challenges are. I know that we've talked as well in the last study about data collection and having the appropriate information, and how if that data isn't gathered, then there's no measurement. I'm just wondering if you see any issues between those two now that you've gone through that process and are currently going through that process.
One of the things that I experience now that I've experienced actually dealing with VAC some more is kind of the same thing that Vivian talked about. VAC is focused, it's set up to treat people that have bullet wounds and limb amputations. And although they're now, well, not now, but for the last few years, they've been accepting mental trauma, they still do not see how that impact, how the mental trauma that you can have a lifelong impact on a person's health. I think that's the biggest problem. VAC has a bias against accepting a physical injury as caused by mental trauma.
Thank you for that. And I think that's an important point is that, and you've talked about this, how the mental impacts the physical health. So do you feel like, because we've heard again and again that when you're in the CAF, if it's not recorded properly, when you get to VAC, it's hard to claim the injury. Is that part of the challenge, that transfer of information? Is it not clear enough from CAF to VAC?
In the past, for sure, I would say. But right now, when I was still in the forces, it was, as I said in my opening statement, it was documented by a military, by a Canadian Forces Health Services psychologist that I had suffered serious physical impact of the mental trauma that I dealt with. VAC does not want to accept that it's linked, that there's a linkage. That physical trauma is, and I see that more as an issue from backside. My sense as I was leaving the military is more accepting of mental trauma. My diabetes was a factor in my release, my medical release, that's for sure. But at the time, it was in no way the fact that I was diabetic was I being penalized by the forces other than the fact I was being released. And I don't dispute that was something because I could no longer meet universality of service. And I do believe in that principle that every person in the military has to be able to serve as required by the Canadian government. So I do accept that. It did lead to my medical release, at least partially. There was other physical problems related to my career that are unrelated to mental trauma. But I do, that was part of my reason for being released. I think it's really on VAC's part to be more aware of the linkage. When I put my claim into VAC, they just basically denied it. They said there's no linkage.
Thank you.